Do you know what Ferrari, Juventus, Philips, and The Economist have in common? All of these giants, from completely different industries, are controlled by the same family, the Agnellis. Few families in Europe have held as much power for as long as the Agnellis. From humble beginnings with the creation of Fiat at the end of the 19th century, they quickly became one of the driving forces behind Italy's development. Over the decades, they expanded their influence across some of Europe's most strategic sectors. Through their holding company, Exor, they currently oversee an empire worth more than 38 billion euros, with investments ranging from automotive manufacturers to football clubs, media conglomerates, and luxury fashion brands. A dynasty that has mastered the art of combining tradition with strategy, staying at the top generation after generation. To grasp the scale of this industrial powerhouse, just look at Stellantis, a company in which the Agnellis hold a controlling stake. Stellantis owns brands like Fiat, Jeep, Ram, Chrysler, Peugeot, and many others. In 2024 alone, the company generated more than 156 billion euros in revenue. But the Agnelli family's reach goes far beyond sports cars and football fields. They invest in everything from agriculture with tractors and heavy machinery to the publishing world, where they control respected outlets that shape global economic discourse. In August 2023, Exor grabbed headlines once again when it announced the purchase of a 15% stake in Philips, in a deal worth $2.5 billion. But who are the Agnellis, really? How has this dynasty managed to preserve its relevance and wealth for over a century? That's what we're going to explore in today's documentary. This story begins with the founding of the Fabbrica Italiana Automobili Torino, or as the world would come to know it, Fiat. Established in 1899 by Giovanni Agnelli and a group of entrepreneurs from the city of Turin in northern Italy, the company quickly stood out thanks to the ingenuity of its designs and the boldness of its engineering. The first vehicle produced by the young automaker was the Fiat 4 HP, a small, lightweight car with a two-cylinder gasoline engine and a modest output of just 4 horsepower. But that was enough to carry 2 passengers efficiently, and at the time, that alone was revolutionary. The model was an immediate success in the Italian market. Just a few years later, in 1906, the company adopted the shorter, more recognizable name Fiat. Soon after, Giovanni Agnelli bought out his original partners and took full control of the company, a move that marked the beginning of his career as a major industrialist. The company's growth was meteoric. By 1910, just a decade after its founding, Fiat had already become Italy's largest car manufacturer, a position it still holds today. But Giovanni Agnelli's ambitions went far beyond passenger cars. He saw the industrial world as a springboard to something even greater. Leveraging his connections in Roman political circles, he began diversifying Fiat's operations. As Italy prepared to enter World War I, Agnelli threw his support behind a rising and controversial political figure, Benito Mussolini. This support marked the beginning of an aggressive expansion period for Fiat. The company broadened its production scope, moving beyond cars to manufacture trucks, machine guns, aircraft engines, and ambulances. Its workforce, which had counted just 50 employees back in 1899, quickly surpassed 4,000, with factories operating at full speed to meet the rising demands of the military. It was in this booming industrial environment that construction began, in 1916, on the Lingotto factory, on the outskirts of Turin. The building was impressive not only for its size, but also for its innovation. A rooftop test track, a world first at the time. When it officially opened in 1923, Lingotto was considered the largest automotive plant on the planet. Inspired by the example of America's Ford Motor Company, Fiat turned its attention to the agricultural sector. In 1919, it launched its first tractor, the Fiat 702, shortly after the arrival of the legendary Fordson F, the first mass-produced tractor in history. The venture was such a success that Fiat created a specialized division for tractor production, Fiat Trattori SPA. This new business unit would go on to play a crucial role in the decades that followed. Over time, it became part of CNH Industrial, one of the largest agribusiness groups in the world, after a series of mergers with major brands like Ford, Case, and New Holland. In less than 20 years, Fiat had gone from being just a car maker to becoming a diversified industrial conglomerate, with operations across multiple sectors of the Italian economy. To better manage its expanding operations, the company created several specialized divisions. Fiat Veicoli Industriali, in charge of truck manufacturing. This division would later give rise to the well-known Iveco. Fiat Veicoli Commerciali, dedicated to light commercial vehicles. Fiat Ferroviaria, the company's railway division, which gained fame for developing the Pendolino train, a feat of engineering that sold successfully across Europe. This division was sold in 2000 to the French company Alstom, Fiat Aviazione, which handled aircraft production, and would later merge with other companies to form Air Italia, one of Italy's leading aerospace firms. As Fiat grew, its business web expanded across multiple sectors. The company controlled several strategic subsidiaries, including the iconic Magneti Marelli, a global reference in auto parts manufacturing. And that wasn't all. The brand also made a mark in the world of two-wheelers through its partnership with Vespa, one of the most famous scooter brands in the world. But Giovanni Agnelli wasn't just an industrialist focused on heavy manufacturing. His instinct for expansion led him to stake claims in key pillars of Italian culture. In the media sector, he acquired the prestigious newspaper La Stampa, one of the country's most influential publications. And in the world of sports, in 1923, he bought Juventus Football Club, establishing a connection that would become deeply intertwined with the Agnelli family's identity for generations to come. With an investment portfolio growing rapidly in size and complexity, Giovanni Agnelli saw the need to consolidate everything under a centralized structure. That's when, in 1927, he founded the Istituto Finanziario Industriale, a holding company that would become the financial core of the Agnelli dynasty. Decades later, that structure would evolve into the modern-day Exor, the investment arm that still manages the family's business empire today. Agnelli's prestige grew as his influence extended far beyond the corporate world. His impact was so significant that the Italian parliament awarded him the title of Senator for Life, a recognition that solidified his position as one of the most powerful men in the country. From then on, he became widely known as Il Senatore. But behind the strength of the empire, one question troubled the patriarch. Who would carry on his legacy? His only daughter, Edoarda, had tragically passed away in 1928, and his son, Edoardo Agnelli, showed no interest in the family business. His story ended in 1935 when he died in a plane crash in Switzerland. That left his grandson, Giovanni Agnelli, still too young and unprepared to lead an industrial empire. So when Il Senatore passed away in December 1945, control of Fiat was entrusted to a trusted name, Vittorio Valletta, a seasoned executive and Giovanni's right-hand man. Though not related by blood, it was up to Valletta to keep the engine running until the true heir was ready to take the wheel. Before his death, Giovanni Agnelli left his grandson, who shared his name but would soon be known worldwide as Gianni Agnelli, or simply L'Avvocato, the lawyer, a nickname earned from his law degree, with a curious piece of advice: have fun until you're tired of it. And Gianni took that advice to heart. With an inheritance worth an estimated $1 billion and an annual allowance of $1 million, both staggering amounts at the time, Gianni fully embraced the dolce vita of Europe's aristocratic elite. He skied the slopes of St. Moritz, Switzerland, and spent weekends at the opulent Villa Leopolda, the family's residence on the French Riviera, a mansion that would later be acquired by billionaire banker Edmond Safra and his wife Lily Safra. Among his favorite indulgences, flying his personal helicopter out to the Mediterranean Sea just to take a morning swim before breakfast. Obsessed with speed, he would race through the streets of Monte Carlo in his Ferrari, as if competing in a Formula One event. A regular figure at glamorous parties and exclusive gatherings of the international elite, Giovanni Agnelli belonged to an inner circle of global power and influence. Among his friends and acquaintances were the Prince of Monaco, members of the Rothschild family, magnate Ali Khan, American publisher Clay Felker, and even Henry Kissinger, with whom he shared a close bond of mutual admiration. But this life of excess came at a price. In 1952, after leaving a party in Monte Carlo in the early morning hours, Gianni lost control of his Ferrari and crashed into a refrigerated truck. The accident was serious. His leg shattered in 6 places, and he narrowly escaped death. According to those close to him, that moment marked a turning point. After the accident, Gianni began living more cautiously, slowly stepping away from the hedonism that had defined his youth, a shift in attitude that would finally prepare him for the role that awaited him at the helm of the Agnelli empire. It wasn't until 1953, 1 year after the accident that nearly claimed his life, that Giovanni Agnelli took a step toward stability by marrying the elegant Princess Marella Caracciolo di Castagneto, heiress to one of Italy's most traditional noble families. The marriage, while socially significant, did not yet mark a true integration into the family business. For much of that decade, Gianni remained on the sidelines of leadership, while the Agnelli empire continued under the steady hands of Vittorio Valletta, the seasoned executive who had become Fiat's guardian following Il Senatore's death. Valletta managed the group with mastery. Under his leadership, Fiat was solidified as Italy's largest industrial conglomerate and one of the most influential in Europe. His guidance transformed the company into a true driving force behind Italy's post-war economy. The power transition came only in 1966, when Gianni, then 45 years old, finally assumed the presidency of the company. The announcement was made on the morning of Saturday, April 30th, during Fiat's annual shareholders meeting in front of 489 attentive and in many cases skeptical shareholders. The question hanging in the air was inevitable. Could this charming heir, known for his jet-set lifestyle, rise to the challenge of leading an industrial empire? By then, Fiat was a giant. It employed more than 130,000 workers and produced in a single business day the same number of vehicles it had manufactured in an entire year back in 1945, when Giovanni Agnelli had passed away. But Fiat was merely the most visible face of something much larger. The Agnelli family held direct and indirect stakes in approximately 25% of all companies listed on the Italian stock exchange, granting them an unprecedented level of influence over the country's economy. That corporate power also left a mark on the urban landscape. The city of Turin, home to Fiat's headquarters, experienced explosive growth from 700,000 residents in the 1950s to over 1.8 million by the 1980s, a direct result of the industrial boom fueled by the group. Despite early doubts, Giovanni Agnelli surprised many. With a leadership style marked by boldness, diplomacy, and strategic vision, he managed to keep the conglomerate at the heart of the European economy, navigating calm and stormy waters alike with the same elegance he was known for outside the boardroom. One of his most iconic moves came in 1969, when Fiat acquired a 50% stake in Ferrari, a strategic decision that would prove even more valuable in the decades to come. After Enzo Ferrari's death in the late 1980s, Fiat's share rose to 90%, securing near total control of the brand. Ironically, Ferrari, originally born as a rebellion against Fiat, would become the most valuable asset in the entire Agnelli portfolio. Still, the road ahead would not be without its setbacks. In the 1970s, the oil crisis hit the automotive industry hard. The price of oil quadrupled, operating costs skyrocketed, and foreign competition surged with brutal force. Within just a few months, in 1974, Fiat sales plummeted by nearly 40%, putting the empire on high alert. Gianni's response was as controversial as it was bold. In 1976, he announced the sale of 10% of Fiat's shares to the government of Libya, led by dictator Muammar Gaddafi, for an astonishing $415 million. News that an authoritarian African leader would become Fiat's second-largest shareholder sent shockwaves through Europe, triggering backlash from markets and behind-the-scenes political pressure on the international stage. The alliance, however, lasted for a full decade until diplomatic pressure, especially from the United States, which canceled contracts with a Fiat subsidiary in protest, forced the Agnelli family to buy the shares back. Gaddafi, meanwhile, walked away with a staggering profit. His initial investment multiplied sevenfold, surpassing the $3 billion mark. Despite the turbulence in the auto sector, Gianni and his brother Umberto Agnelli remained focused on diversification. Throughout the 1980s, they expanded into the luxury automotive market, taking control of Alfa Romeo, finalizing the full acquisition of Ferrari, and later bringing Maserati into the group's portfolio. Beyond cars and engines, the Agnelli family also made their mark in sectors like insurance, real estate, and even international landmarks. One of the most symbolic moves was acquiring a stake in the Rockefeller Center, one of New York's most iconic buildings. But like all great eras, Giovanni Agnelli's was also nearing its end. In 2003, he passed away after a battle with prostate cancer, marking the loss of one of Italy's most emblematic business figures. Shortly after, in 2004, his brother Umberto, who had taken the reins of the group, also died from the same disease. The loss of both brothers left a vacuum at the top of Fiat, which had already been facing serious challenges since the early 2000s. For decades, the Agnelli empire had relied on seasoned leadership. Now it was entering a fragile transition period. The big question loomed: who had the courage and the skill to take charge of such a massive empire? The challenge fell to a much younger heir, John Elkann, Giovanni Agnelli's grandson, who was just 28 years old at the time. To many, he was an unfamiliar name, a quiet, reserved young man, almost the opposite of his charismatic grandfather. But behind the modest demeanor lay strategic vision and careful preparation. John quickly proved he was up to the task. He took control of the family holding company, which would undergo major restructuring and adopt a new name, Exor. Under this new structure, all of the Agnelli empire's holdings were reorganized organized with a sharp focus on efficiency, diversification, and modern corporate governance. One of John Elkann's most pivotal decisions was appointing Sergio Marchionne as CEO of Fiat, and that move would prove to be a true turning point. With his direct approach and keen intellect, Marchionne engineered one of the most impressive turnarounds the auto industry has ever seen. In record time, he turned mounting losses into consistent profits, and in 2009, just 5 years after taking the helm, he pulled off one of the boldest moves in the industry, the merger between Fiat and the American automaker Chrysler, which was reeling from the 2008 global financial crisis. The birth of FCA, Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, marked a major milestone. The new company significantly strengthened the group's presence in the United States and expanded its portfolio of global brands in a strategic move that saved Chrysler and reintroduced Fiat to the world stage. While Marchionne steered the operation, John Elkann worked quietly behind the scenes, far from the media spotlight. But his low profile didn't mean he was inactive, quite the opposite. He was beginning a new chapter in the family's story, marked by sharp acquisitions and a quiet yet global expansion. Under his leadership, Exor began acquiring iconic assets. Among the most notable were the prestigious British magazine The Economist, the French luxury brand Christian Louboutin, and the reinsurer PartnerRe, which was later sold for over $9 billion, one of the most profitable exits in the portfolio. Elkann also pushed for major internal restructuring. He spun off Iveco and C&H Industrial into independent companies, and in 2015, he took Ferrari public, transforming the legendary Italian automaker into a crown jewel of the global financial markets. In 2021, FCA made headlines once again by merging with the French PSA Group, owner of brands like Peugeot and Citroën, forming Stellantis, now the fifth largest automaker in the world by sales volume. But the group didn't limit itself to traditional sectors. Looking to the future, John created a venture investment arm in 2018 focused on startups and tech, positioning Exor firmly in the global innovation ecosystem. One of the most significant investments was in Brex, a fintech founded by two Brazilians and valued at over $12 billion. With more than 5 generations of history, the legacy of the Agnelli family lives on, adapted to modern times, yet guided by the same principles that built it: long-term vision, global ambition, and an unwavering commitment to business excellence. Did you enjoy the story of the Agnelli family, one of the most influential business dynasties in the world? Then let us know in the comments, which other billionaire family would you like to see featured here? It might just be the subject of our next video. And if you enjoy this kind of content, consider becoming a channel member. It's the best way to support our work here at Singular Business. And if you'd like to help us out in a simple way, just like this video, subscribe and turn on notifications. It's completely free, but it means the world to us and helps us keep bringing you the most fascinating stories from the world of business. Want to hear the story of a refugee who became one of the world's top investors? Click the video on your screen and discover the incredible rise of Li Lu.